Hello, ladies, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Military Podcast. I hope that you're doing amazing. And if you're not, that's okay too. And today I have a special episode for you. As I've been talking and mentioning before, we are going to be doing podcast interviews, not only of military women, but also women that have left the military and are doing amazing things outside of the military, because that's what this is all about. This platform is all about you learning and adapting to this new environment that we call the civilian sector. And so today I have an amazing, beautiful woman. Her name is Rhonda Snipe. She's a speaker and an author. And the reason I not only wanted to invite her to this podcast is not only because she's an amazing leader and she's done her time in the military. You'll learn a little bit more about her here shortly, but because of the nature of how we connected. As you guys know, I love meeting new people. I love connecting. And Rhonda reached out. She connected with me on LinkedIn. We briefly chatted on message on LinkedIn for those of you that have LinkedIn. And I just loved the opportunity that we had to connect with one another through Zoom. And the way this woman not only shows up for herself. I mean, she is beautiful already, but she brings the lipstick, she brings the clothing, she brings the fashion. So I absolutely loved her personality and also, most importantly, what she offers. And by that, I mean her coaching business, her coaching experience. And I really thought that this would be a great opportunity for us to sit here and really have a conversation about her story and what got her into coaching and how she's helping other women, so that not only you listening, but possibly somebody else that you share this podcast episode with can learn from her. And there's a lot of knowledge here, over 30 years, but I'm going to go ahead and let Rhonda introduce herself. Rhonda, please let us know where you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Hi, Wendy, and thank you for having me. So, again, my name is Rhonda, and I served for 32 years in the Army and Army Reserve. So, I retired last year, and it was one of the best decisions that I have made in my life. I had an amazing, extensive military career as an AG officer, so Adjutant General, which is Human Resources, as well as Congressional Affairs. So, I had an amazing tour of working at the Pentagon and being able to serve in a congressional and legislative affairs space, which is the premises of how I even got started into coaching. And so I mentioned that I retired. So I retired in Washington, D.C. So I live in Nova,
Mm.
Northern Virginia. So I'm in Arlington right now, and it's literally Army Navy Drive across from the Pentagon. So
Okay, so let's kind of like stop here because one, I still don't know how you do it with the traffic in that area. I live in North Carolina and we live out in the country in the middle of nowhere, and I love it. So kudos to you with the hustle and bustle every single day. And I know you mentioned 32 years of service. I mean,
yes.
I really want to start there. Like, what was that the goal for you at the very beginning, or was that something that just continued? The passion that you had for the military just continued.
Absolutely. Good question, Wendy. It definitely was not the goal. It was like many, I need a change of scenery, and the Army is going to offer me adventure. So, on the buddy program, I signed up, but I definitely, to answer your question, I definitely did not know that I would continue to serve for 32 years. And so I entered the military enlisted right out of high school on the buddy system. And I'm still friends with that buddy today. So it's been an amazing
That's
ride.
amazing.
Yes,
That's
it,
awesome.
it is. And so I entered into the military as a combat medic, and it was amazing. I love the adventure of being able to do airway breathing circulation, just the basics, just keep
Yeah,
people alive, right? And so
right.
that was amazing. And I entered into what I feel like one of the most famous schools during my time. It was called 91 Charlie School. So I became a practical nurse or a licensed practical nurse through the military.
Nice.
And I was functioning as a reserve component when I went to Charlie School. So I had completed 4 years of active duty, jumped off of active duty, got in the reserve, and continued to serve in the reserve component. And that was a great life for me because I was able to be twice the citizen, a civilian as well as a soldier, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So as I finished my time of serving as a practical nurse, I went to school and got commissioned, and I call it I went on the dark side.
They still call it that.
Okay, okay, just so you know. So yes, I went on the dark side because I had people in my network that understood my value. So there were other women of color who were officers that saw my strengths and my value as
Mm,
an enlisted service member, and they highly recommended that I transition and get commission. And I took that advice, and it was one of the best decisions. And so, ironically, Wendy, the military will tell you at the need of the military, we need AG officers.
yeah.
And I said, but I'm in nursing school. What do you mean you need AG officers?
What do you mean you need admin help?
That part, right? And so amazingly, this is how God works in your life.
Mm,
God allowed me to be branch detailed to the Adjutant General Corps. And it was the best thing that ever happened to my life.
mm,
Hindsight. You couldn't have told me this
right.
at the time it was going on because I would have derailed God's plan for my life.
Right. And I love that you brought that up, Rhonda, because we don't know what we don't know until either we're in it or we see it in the rear view mirror 5 years, 10 years ago, right? And I also want to kind of go back a little bit when you mentioned or you said that the leaders that you had around you, women of color, they encouraged you to take that step, to take that leap, to broaden your scope that you had, right? And being that we are in Black History Month, we are in this time where we want to be able to be around other women that look like us and be encouraged instead of be discouraged or not being seen in a way where they can see the potential that we have, right? And it's different, not to say that other women can't see the potential, but because of the background and the story that is there growing up is definitely different. And so tell me a little bit more about um, how was that for you? Was that something that you were surprised by, or it's something that just came natural when that leader had that conversation with you?
I definitely was not surprised by it. And I'll say why. Wendy, you just like me, we know how our strengths show up for us. We
Mm,
understand. And it's like many women who serve in the military. They know how their strengths show up. But when someone else see your strengths functioning in a higher capacity, that's when the light bulb comes on when someone else say, I see your value. I see your
hmm.
strengths.
Yeah,
You should, and what their recommendation is telling you something that's going to elevate you to a next level. And that's the sweet spot. That's the space that I like to influence in others. See where they are, understand what their strengths are for them, how do they show up in their zone of genius, and then just provide some networking opportunities for them to go to another level.
I love that. I love that because that's what really life is all about, right? We want to see where we're struggling, our weaknesses, where we're going in the future with our strengths that aren't built yet, but how are we going to get that muscle or that skill to strengthen? And I just love that, this individual, this leader really showed you that. And, for all of our listeners now, if you're in a leadership position, or maybe you're not in a leadership position, maybe you are just showing up to work, showing up to your unit, or maybe you're out of the military now and you're like, well, how do I continue to show up as the leader and encourage other women that look like me, encourage maybe the younger community, right? Or maybe it's vice versa because the young community now, they're just doing, really, really well. And, the way they're showing up is amazing as well. But how can you do that today? Or possibly, maybe someone that you've touched bases maybe in basic training, or maybe you haven't talked to this individual in such a long time, and just checking in on that person, because let's admit it, there aren't a lot of Black women, Hispanic women, Asian, minority group women in the military, and we would love to have more not only someone that looks like us, but be encouraged by those women leaders. And just to share a little bit about kind of like my experience, Rhonda, I was very blessed to have a sergeant major. She's Mexican and Puerto Rican. And the first um, kind of like reaction that I had when I met her was, I want to be like her one day. And it was because she was just so professional, but at the same time, she was a go getter. And by that, I mean, she knew that not there weren't many that looked like her, especially not at her level. She was a command sergeant major.
Correct.
And so when she sat me down one day, she's like, ma'am, I need to be honest with you. This is what you need to work on. And this is where you're doing well, but this is where you need to, step it up. That after that day, I'm like, I was mind blown because I felt like I needed that tough love, right? I needed that. It was different than hearing it from my commander, my male counterpart, because it just really resonated with me on, you're right. I need to get better at this, not because it's needed, but because I want to. I want to be better. I want to be able to show up for my my unit. And that's really what she emphasized, right? She was all about the unit. It was not about her being the best command sergeant major. It wasn't about me being the best officer. The reason being was because I was HR too, right? And we take care of people. And that's what we
Yes.
don't know in hindsight. You didn't know that that's what it meant. Going back to your combat medical opportunity, you're taking care of people, and it's very similar, right? It's not, with the whole what is it called, your life situation, life or death situation, but
Mhm.
it really kind of is, right? When you're dealing with this individual's pay, this individual's career, their promotion. And so again, being focused on caring. And I think that that's where you looking back, you're like, I did not know that this is what ultimately I was doing, taking care of the soldiers, taking care of my unit. And so another thing that you brought up was, and I'm curious to know, Rhonda, and I'm sure listeners will appreciate this. You mentioned that, God had a plan for you that in hindsight you didn't know that that was what he wanted for you. Can you share a little bit about how your faith has played a role throughout your military career? Maybe you already went in believe as a believer, or is that something that um, happened while you were in? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking. I definitely was a believer before I entered into the military. And the reason why my voice shifted to answer this question, my register is different, is because had it not been for the love of God in my life, some of the experiences that I had to endure as a Black woman in this military, I could only rely on my relationship with God to get me through those trying times. And I can tell you that my faith, my community, my family, my friends, all of those things have played a role in supporting who I am and what I've been able to endure and accomplish throughout my military career. So God has been present in my life since I was a little girl. And I love that it was established and my foundation was solid before I went out into life and had to endure all of the uncertainties and the unknowns that were ahead of me. And so I do want to say, while it's important to highlight the magnificent people and processes and the institution of the military as a phenomenal platform to get your start, to build a life, to expose your family to some of the greater things in life, and to also just be developed as a leader, kudos to the military for providing that. And as it pertains to walking by faith inside of the institution, it is also riddled with its issues when it comes to lack of diversity
Hmm.
and lack of understanding gender. And so women do not identify as women veterans today because of some of the situations and circumstances that they experienced along their military career. And that's where coaching comes in for me is I am so excited to be able to help women veterans identify as women veterans and also to be able to coach women into mastering their communication skills because the research show that women veterans are isolated
Mm,
and we are isolated because our voice haven't been shared, and I want to be able to establish a pathway so that you can master that communication skill, build that confidence, and really introduce yourself to the marketplace and show your strengths, your value add, and just show how you show up in your zone of genius.
I love that. I absolutely love that because when you were saying the part of women are not identifying as women veterans, I remember when I first got out, this was 2017. So, like, it was like 2018. Um, Me and my husband, I think we had met neighbors or somebody at daycare. I can't remember correctly, but specifically that location. But I do remember hesitating to say that I was a veteran too. I remember, they're like, "Oh, so, where were you?" And, it was all about him because we were both dual military. And
Yes.
so they didn't ask, or typically they don't ask, right? They're not like, "Oh, what about you?" or "What do you do?" It was more of like, "Oh, so, you used to do this, and oh, great, what unit were you in?" And we were in civilian clothes, and at the time we were both out. And so I'm like, I'm not even going to bring it up. It's not, no need to share, right? But fast forward, I'm like, why was I so hesitant to talk about it? I kind of felt like this, I didn't want one kind of like people asking me questions and, what did you do? And, that part, because I was kind of getting out of that identity. But at the same time, I kind of felt a little, I don't know if it was insecure, but I just didn't feel confident enough
Yes.
to talk about my experience. And as if my husband's experience was worth more than my experience. And so when you said that, it just took me back to that moment where I know I questioned myself later that I'm like, I wonder why I didn't share it. Why was it so difficult for me to jump in and be like, oh yeah, and by the way, I was also in the military, like be as excited about it as I am now. Before it was like, okay, they don't need to know. It's okay. And so Rhonda, being that this is what you're doing now, can you share a little bit more on what does that look like? Maybe someone that you've worked with before, or how you've helped them, really create this voice of feeling empowered and confident to to identify as a woman veteran.
So, so good, Wendy. Yes, so good. Thank you for sharing your example because honestly, individuals who I'm speaking to that are not military, they cannot process what do you mean women don't identify as women veterans? So kudos to you for laying out exactly what that looks like, what it feels like, and how it's a memory for you that, to your point, it took you back.
Hmm.
And so, thank you for sharing that. It resonates. So, yes, today, what I also want to give you kudos about is I've been on your website and it's very clear that you identify as a woman veteran. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Like I
And I
said, I've
also
come a
like,
long way.
yes, thank you. I also like that you help military women show up intentionally with more time, more presence, and just more of family life and for God. So thank you for just getting on that platform and doing that. Kudos to you. And so to answer your question about what I do, I will share with you one of the things that I do is exactly what I was able to do with you. You mentioned it earlier that I saw you out on LinkedIn. And I just said, oh, let me connect because for me, my framework is communicate, connect, and network. I do it seamlessly And so that's how it was very easy for me. That's a pain point for some women. They just can't arbitrarily reach out on LinkedIn and say, "Hi, this is Rhonda. Just wanted to connect. Notice that you're a woman veteran, you're coaching, just wanted to connect and say hello." And to your point, that led us to just share a quick Zoom call with one another so we
Mhm.
can see each other and talk to each other and also just feel each other's energy. Everyone is not in your life for a lifetime, but I do believe that people are in your life for a reason and for a season, and sometimes it leads to a lifetime. So, what I'm able to do is go out, connect with women veterans, and to take it a step further, what I saw also about you is that you had already established yourself to having your own small business. You're already on a platform where you can share your voice. So for me, you've found your voice. Can you elevate to a next level? Absolutely. That's where networking comes in. That's where platforms where I may have a space to enter in and share bring you into the fold. And how I would bring you into the fold is by doing exactly what you're doing. You're hosting a podcast, you're interviewing me. I will go and share this podcast on my social media platform and celebrate and highlight the time that you and I shared together. That is a quick win for both of us. And to give you another example is one of my colleagues and also a mentor, Army woman veteran, her name is Monica. She's the CEO of Blue Violet Productions. She interviewed me and she shared with me that her previous podcast that she posted on LinkedIn had 65 impressions. Once I posted and shared and highlighted our podcast, it was 285 impressions. So the numbers do expose, and that's one of my goals. My goal in life with my coaching business is to transition women veterans out of social isolation into global economic integration.
I love it. And I just love how you walked me through the process with, with or me as an example, because I didn't even realize that that is really what happened, right? And I just love that you walked me through that, because I'm like, I just thought it was a message saying, "Hey, I'm Rhonda. I'm also a woman veteran here. Thank you for connecting or following." And it's those little messages, right? Like, you take 30 seconds to connect randomly, and there's, like you mentioned, there's a reason and a season for when you connect with certain people. I for sure believe that, because there are people in my life that I've had for or that we connected, and it was like, again, a 30-second direct message, and now we're more than best friends, right? And it's just unbelievable. And I worked for a recruiting company, and one of the things that a lot of our female veterans, military women, struggled with was talking about them, talking about who they are without the uniform. And so I think that what you're doing is not only very beneficial for each individual woman out there that's thinking about the transition, that is possibly unsure of how to communicate all their experience, all their skills and talents and gifts that God has given them to share with either, a company, a corporate sector, or their own business with other people. And I think that it's a beautiful thing that what you're doing is helping them create that. And I just love everything you said about, you know, being able to find that voice and platform, and how you can then network, right? Because it's hard to network if you don't have a voice. And keep it in mind that, of course, by that I mean communication involved, meaning either through a direct message, through an email, through a post, because it is difficult to talk about us, because we don't focus about that in the military. We focus about others, and we focus about our soldiers, and we focus about the mission itself. And so when it's time to kind of like pulling the plug out of getting out of the military, oh my gosh, who am I? What am I doing? And, a lot of the things that you mentioned, I also work with some of my clients with their identity, right? Where I'm no longer a commander. I'm no longer an officer. I have to start from scratch. I don't know what I'm going to do. what do I, how do I prioritize what I'm going into, right? And so this is where, again, for you it may be different, but for me, coaching has changed not only how I really understand what's going in my mind, but also really see the things that I'm doing, how that's affecting the things that I'm doing. And so, if we're not um, confident, if we're not really understanding what we're really good at, right? It's going to be difficult to talk about it and network. That would be the action line. That we're like, no, we're not going to do that. I don't even know, how I'm going to introduce myself because I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm getting out, but what else do I do? What else do I have to offer besides my HR degree? And so again, coaching has not only helped me understand that there's a lot of things going on in this brain, a lot of thoughts coming in, limiting beliefs,
Mhm.
but also as a believer, how do we then not only get into the word and seek God when we know that this is something that is going to be ongoing, right? We can't shut down our brain. This is just something that we have to not only be able to deal with,
Mhm.
but also be able to to deceive the thoughts that are coming in that are not of God, because He's already told us, like, you're already worth it. Even before you were here, you're
Yes.
already my masterpiece. You're already, you know, um, confident because of me, not because of our degrees or the money that we have in our account, but because He's already given us that authority. And so I really do love what you're doing, Rhonda. And, just real quickly here, because I see that we're kind of coming here at time. Why is, or can you share with us, even more so, kind of like a tip or something that our listeners can take today for them to start doing that on their own? Because it takes a lot, right, to reach out and say, hey, Rhonda, I need help, right? It's hard for us to tell a doctor or a therapist, like, hey, I need help. We first kind of have to struggle a little bit and kind of see where we're at. So what would you recommend, let's say, a listener right now driving to work that is possibly, not only timid, but maybe even scared of how they're going to present themselves, how they're going to talk about themselves as they're thinking about the transition or as they're transitioning now?
Honestly, I would say, clearing my throat for this one, call Wendy or call Rhonda. No, listen, call what we represent. That's exactly what I'm saying. We both represent a space of coaching. Coaching is so vital. Even if you just do a discovery call with Wendy or with myself or with your coach of choice, I am going to say it is one of the most beneficial moves that you can make in your life. And the reason why I'm saying it is because it helps bring direction. You can get your fears out. You can understand what is driving the fear. And you can also build confidence. So, right now, the military, Bright Light, is in a pilot program with coaching.
Yes.
Bright light. Yes. So the military even gets it, and it is the largest federal employer. So I would recommend that everyone, including you, we talked about this, Wendy. You have a coach. I have a coach.
Yep.
We both are believers in God, and inside of our belief, in the natural, God still leads us and direct us and guide us to people. God used people to bless people. So get in a space where you're comfortable just talking to another person that you can readily identify with and start with getting just a discovery call with a coach.
I love that. I love that, Rhonda. Just call me or call Rhonda.
Right.
It's that easy. Just go ahead and do it either through LinkedIn, through Instagram, which, by the way, ladies, all of Rhonda's information is going to be here on the show notes. And I know we didn't get time to talk much about your book, but please, Rhonda, just really quickly, I want them to know that this woman is also an author, and she is not only doing her coaching, she's an author, but she's also, doing things for the community, doing things that is impactful in many different ways. So share with us a little bit about your book, and everything else. Again, ladies, will be in the show notes. So if you're driving, please, this is not the time to check it out. Check on it later. But also her website will be on there. And if you are interested in seeing Rhonda's beautiful background and her outfit and the lipstick that she's wearing, you could also watch this video. It will be in the show notes. So with that, go ahead, Rhonda, with your book.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. So, the name of my book is called Daily Wealth Affirmations, a guide for women veterans to think, create, and generate wealth. Ladies, don't let the word wealth scare you. Wealth just means anything of value in abundance. So, you can have an abundance of time, health, knowledge, wealth, your choice. But I talk to you about my framework to think, create, and generate inside the book. So I encourage you to read the book to understand how to think using godly wisdom, how to create using faith, and how to generate with the help of the Holy Spirit.
I love it. Thank you, Rhonda, so much for that. And by the way, as soon as we're done with this call, I'm getting the book, and then you and I are going to connect and talk about it, because that is the only way, again, right? Like you mentioned earlier, we want to connect, communicate, and network. And, I would love, and ladies, I know you'll see us again together, doing something, maybe a workshop. Maybe it's just, reading this book in the future. Who knows? But again, God uses us for a reason. He brings us together for a reason. And we want you to take this moment to really just focus on you and ask yourself, is this something that you need help with? And if it is, Rhonda's here available, and she has so much experience, and she is such a just humble woman to work with, talk to. I mean, our conversation, I think we had booked it for 30 minutes, and thankfully we both had time in our calendar to extend it to an hour, because everything that we were learning from one another, questions that we had with our experiences, not only in the military, but also with coaching, and really allowing us to grow as individuals, as businesswomen, and also to continue to empower more women, because that's really the goal here. So if this episode resonated with you, share it with another military sister, share it with another woman of color that may not know that she needs this in this moment. Maybe she's transitioning next year in a couple of months. Who knows? So share this episode. We greatly appreciate it. And if you are feeling generous today, I'd love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcast. Let us know how this episode impacted you, or just this podcast alone. So thank you again, Rhonda. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time, and we hope that you continue to not only empower other women through their voice, but also through coaching, and which is going to be a lifelong skill. Thank you, Rhonda. All
Thank
right.
you so much, Wendy.
You guys have a beautiful rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.